they said. She fell. Hospitals don't smell like this. Hospitals don't smell like bleach unless someone is trying to erase something. That was the first thought that cut through me as I stepped into the room. Not sadness, not shock, suspicion. The air burned the back of my throat. Disinfectant layered over fear, over panic, over the quiet aftermath of violence. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too clean, as if brightness itself could undo what had already been done. My granddaughter lay on the bed, unnaturally still. Children don't hold themselves like that unless they've learned that moving makes things worse. One eye swollen shut, a cast running from wrist to elbow, bruises blooming across her neck, oval, uneven, unmistakably shaped like fingers. I wrapped my hand around the cold metal rail at the foot of the bed and felt something inside me lock into place. "Who did this to you?" I asked. My voice was steady, calm, almost gentle. Her lip trembled anyway. She didn't answer at first, just stared at the wall, breathing shallowly, as if the room itself might turn on her if she said the wrong thing. Then her shoulders collapsed inward. "Grandma," her voice cracked. "It was Mark." The name landed heavy. She swallowed, fighting for breath. "He lost again. Cards, money." His mother and sister, they held me down. I couldn't. She shook her head violently. I couldn't finish. That was all she managed before the sobs took over. Something cold spread through my chest. Not anger. Clarity. I leaned closer and brushed a strand of hair away from the only part of her face that wasn't bruised. "Listen to me," I said quietly. "You didn't fall. And you didn't fail." Her one good eye widened in fear. "Grandma, please, don't. They'll hurt you. They'll hurt Mia." Mia, my great-granddaughter, 7 years old, small, quiet, already learning how to disappear inside her own home. I gave my granddaughter a small, reassuring smile, the kind I'd learned to wear in places where panic was contagious. "They already crossed that line," I said. "Now they live with it." 6 hours earlier, I had been somewhere else entirely. A place called Silvercrest, living facility. All manicured hedges, polite smiles, and locked doors disguised as care. The kind of place families choose when they want control without guilt. It was 5:10 in the morning. I had already finished my exercises. 20 wall push-ups, 50 crunches, measured breathing. My body was 71 years old. It did not feel fragile. I was pulling on my sweater when the door opened without a knock. A young nurse stood there holding a medication tray, eyes darting to her clipboard. Nervous. New. I looked once. "That dosage is wrong," I said. She froze. "That's insulin," I continued. "Your chart says metformin. You'll put him into shock." Her face drained of color as she checked. Her hands began to shake. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." "You will be," I replied calmly. "But not today. Fix it." She fled. I sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled slowly. Silvercrest wasn't my prison because of the room. It was my prison because of a single document. 2 years earlier, my stepson Ethan had convinced me to sign authority papers. Temporary, he'd said. Just in case. Now my accounts were frozen, my movements monitored, my freedom conditional. Still, I was not helpless. I had promised myself I would never use those skills again. The phone rang at 6:02 a.m. "Is this Eleanor Reed?" a clipped voice asked. "Yes." "This is Mercy General. Your granddaughter has been admitted. She fell down the stairs." The lie was lazy. Practiced. "I'll be there," I said. 20 minutes. I hung up and stared at the wall for half a second longer than necessary. Ethan would never authorize an emergency release. He'd say I was confused, unsafe, better off staying put. So I made one call. "Get me Dr. Alvarez," I said to the front desk. A pause, then a familiar voice, older but unmistakable. "Ellie?" "Jesus. It's been a long time." "Carlos," I said, "I need you to do something that won't fit neatly on a form." He didn't ask why. Some debts don't require explanations. When the hospital transport arrived, Silvercrest's administrator protested. Papers waived. Policies cited. The nurse simply handed him the signed consult request. I walked past without looking back. Now I stood at the foot of my granddaughter's bed, reading the chart myself. Fractured ulna, cracked rib, concussion, deep tissue contusions. These injuries told a story, and gravity wasn't the villain. "I'm clumsy," she whispered suddenly. "I tripped." "No." The word cut cleanly through the lie. "I've treated worse injuries than this," I said. "I know the difference between a fall and a fist." Her face crumpled, and then everything came out. The gambling, blushing, the apologies that meant nothing. Mark's mother, Lorraine, who called her useless. His sister, Dana, who enjoyed watching her shrink. And then, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned the money. "A trust," she whispered. "Offshore. Mark doesn't know about it. Lorraine hides it." I stored that away carefully. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You're staying here," I said. "The doctor will say your memory is foggy. You'll rest." Her eye widened. "Grandma, where are you going?" "To babysit." I turned toward the door. "And to make sure no one ever touches you or Mia again." The house sat in Northbridge Heights. From the outside, it looked ordinary. Neighbors, lawns, flags. Inside, it smelled like neglect. Beer, old food, stale anger. Lorraine barely looked at me from the couch. Dana didn't look up at all. "Guest room's full," Lorraine muttered. "Pull-out's there. Kitchen's a mess. Make yourself useful." Then I heard it. A sound too small to belong in a house full of adults. A sob swallowed quickly. I followed it to a narrow room off the kitchen. Mia sat on the floor clutching a broken doll, staring at nothing. Before I could kneel, a boy burst in. Mark's nephew. Bigger than her. Smiling cruelly. "Still crying?" he sneered, yanking the doll away. I moved without raising my voice. One step, one grip, one precise application of pressure. The doll dropped. "We do not steal," I said quietly. Chaos followed, but when it ended, the rules were clear. I helped Mia to her feet. Her hand was cold in mine. "It's okay," I whispered. "I'm here." That night, after she finally fell asleep in a clean bed, I stood alone in the hallway. For the first time that day, my hand trembled. Just once. I closed my fingers into a fist and steadied my breath. "Downstairs," voices whispered. Not fear. Planning. And I understood something with perfect clarity. They weren't panicking. They were preparing. I stepped back into the shadows as their words sharpened into intent. And I realized the next move wouldn't be loud. It would be quiet, calculated. And if I misjudged it, someone far smaller than me would pay the price. Paperwork had succeeded where locked doors never could. That thought stayed with me as I stood in the kitchen the next morning, watching milk pool too quickly in a cracked bowl. The house was quiet in the way dangerous places often are. Not peaceful, just waiting. Mia sat at the table, feet tucked under the chair, eyes drifting toward the hallway as if it might move on its own. She didn't touch her spoon until I nodded once. Then she ate fast, silent, practiced. Children don't learn that kind of restraint by accident. I knew Lorraine wouldn't strike openly. Women like her never did. They waited. They documented. They made the world agree with them. The doorway creaked softly. Lorraine stood there, freshly dressed, hair smoothed into place. The hostility from yesterday was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. Politeness. Politeness. "Well," she said lightly, "you certainly got up early." "I'm on a schedule," I replied. "Children need consistency." Her smile twitched, just barely. "So do institutions." Behind her, Dana hovered like a storm cloud, arms crossed, foot tapping. Her anger wasn't hidden. It vibrated off her in sharp, impatient bursts. "She's acting like she owns the place," Dana muttered. Lorraine lifted one finger. Dana stopped mid-sentence. That single gesture told me everything I needed to know about how this house actually functioned. By late morning, the kitchen smelled clean. Too clean. Bleach again. Lorraine moved slowly, deliberately, watching me from corners and door frames. She didn't interfere. She observed. That told me she was collecting something. Evidence. Reactions. Slips. I kept Mia close. When I went to the bathroom, she waited outside the door. When she colored, I sat at the table with her. Lorraine noticed that too. The phone rang just before noon. Lorraine answered immediately. "Yes," she said. Pause. "Of course." When she hung up, she didn't look at me right away. She poured herself water first. Calm. Controlled. "Silvercrest called," she said finally. "They're concerned about you." I inclined my head. "That's reasonable. They say your release wasn't properly authorized." "Emergency consults don't require family consent," I replied evenly. Lorraine smiled. Not warmly, not cruelly, administratively. "Everything requires consent eventually," she said, "especially when money is involved." There it was. Not concern, not care, control. I made my call that afternoon while Mia napped. Dr. Alvarez answered on the third ring. "They've noticed," I said. "They always do," he replied. "But they won't rush. Bureaucracy moves at the speed of self-protection. Unless someone pushes." Silence stretched between us. "Eleanor," he said carefully, "once this starts, it doesn't stop easily. Using those skills always came at a cost." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm being precise." After we hung up, I noticed the upstairs door close softly. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Dinner was Lorraine's idea. She placed the plastic-wrapped package of ground beef on the counter with deliberate care. "Don't waste it," she said. "Budgets are tight." Dana snorted. The meat smelled faintly off. Not enough to alarm most people. Enough for me. I nodded and began cooking. 2 pans. 2 sets of utensils. I moved calmly, methodically. This wasn't revenge. This was a test. I needed to know how far Lorraine would let it go. At the table, she served herself first. Dana followed. Mark's nephew piled his plate high. Mia ate from the portion I'd prepared separately. Within minutes, the room shifted, coughing. A hand clamped over a mouth, a chair scraping back hard. Dana bolted for the sink, gagging violently. Lorraine gripped the table, breathing shallowly, eyes watering. I watched her carefully. She didn't accuse me. She didn't shout. She endured. That told me everything. Later, as Dana cursed from the bathroom, Lorraine sipped water slowly and met my gaze. Her expression wasn't angry. It was calculating. Mark stumbled in just after midnight. Drunk, loud, sloppy. "Where's my dinner?" he slurred. "Where's my kid?" I stepped into the hallway. "You'll lower your voice," I said. "There's a child sleeping." He squinted at me, confused rage flickering behind his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" "The person making sure she sleeps safely tonight." That was enough. He lunged. I stepped inside the motion, redirected his weight, and let gravity do the work. He hit the floor hard, stunned more than hurt. I didn't press the advantage. That mattered. The police arrived 15 minutes later. Because Mark called them himself. "She attacked me," he slurred, pointing. The officer looked at me, then at Mark's unsteady stance, then at the bruise forming on Mark's own knuckles. "Ma'am?" the officer asked. "I defended myself," I replied. "Minimal force." He nodded once. "Sir," he said to Mark, "go to bed." They left. From the stairs, Lorraine watched silently, not impressed, not alarmed, just filing it away. Silvercrest called again the next morning. This time, they used formal language: review, assessment, wellness check. Paperwork was gathering momentum. Paperwork had teeth. I expected that. What I hadn't accounted for was Dana. She cornered me in the hallway while Mia was in the bathroom, hands clenched, eyes wild. "You think you're smarter than us," she hissed. "You think you've won." "I think you're impulsive," I replied calmly. "And that makes you predictable." Her hand twitched. Lorraine's voice cut in sharply from the kitchen. "Dana." Dana froze, but her eyes promised something reckless. That promise stayed with me longer than it should have. That night, the house didn't sleep. I heard whispered voices through the thin walls. Not arguing. Planning. Lorraine spoke in low, even tones. Dana interrupted with bursts of anger. Mark sounded confused and afraid. I pressed closer to the door, careful with my breathing. Words drifted through. "Tie her up. Call Silvercrest. Say she's unstable. The child won't remember." My stomach tightened. This wasn't bluffing. This was logistics. I backed away silently and locked my door. Mia stirred in her sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed and steadied my hands. Using my skills would protect her, but it would also put her in danger. That was the cost. They weren't panicking. They were preparing, and preparation meant they believed they had time. Time was the one thing I couldn't afford to miscalculate. The hearing, the file, and the child they nearly took. The knock came at 8:14 a.m. Not loud, not polite, official. I knew what it was before I reached the door. Lorraine was already there when I opened it. Two people stood on the porch. A man with a clipboard and a woman holding a tablet close to her chest. Both wore neutral expressions, carefully trained not to escalate a room. "Eleanor Harris?" the man asked. "Yes. I'm Daniel Reeves. This is Marissa Cole. We're with Silvercrest Behavioral Services." Lorraine let out a breath that sounded suspiciously like relief. "We were expecting you," she said smoothly. "Thank you for coming so quickly." That was her first mistake. Silvercrest never arrived quickly, unless someone had pushed the file too hard. They didn't ask to come in. That mattered too. They stepped inside only after Lorraine gestured broadly toward the living room, already talking. "We're very concerned," she said. "Eleanor's condition has deteriorated." I said nothing. "The woman?" Marissa glanced at me briefly, then down at her tablet. "We're here for a wellness check," she said, "and to discuss a temporary reassessment." "Temporary?" Lorraine echoed gently. "Until everyone feels safe." Mia peeked out from the hallway, her hand curled around the doorframe. Marissa noticed her immediately. Children always change the temperature of a room. "That's her," Lorraine said quickly. "The child Eleanor has been fixating on." I felt something cold slide into my chest. I had expected this. I just hadn't expected how fast. They asked me to sit. I did. They asked questions in calm, rehearsed tones. Had I been sleeping well? Had I experienced confusion? Did I feel persecuted by my family? Lorraine answered when I didn't. Dana hovered nearby, arms crossed, eyes bright with anticipation. Mark wasn't there. Smart of him. Marissa typed steadily. Daniel watched me instead. "That medication change," he said casually. "Who approved it?" "Dr. Alvarez," I replied. He nodded. "We'll need documentation." "Of course." I watched Lorraine carefully. She was too calm. That was her second mistake. The hearing was scheduled for that afternoon. Not a court. Not yet. A review. Paperwork had matured. I was escorted, politely, to Silvercrest by Marissa and Daniel. Lorraine insisted on riding along. "I should be there," she said, "for support." I didn't argue. That would have helped her narrative. Mia stayed behind. That was unavoidable. That was the cost I had already accepted. Or so I thought. The review room was smaller than I remembered, less sterile. Someone had tried to make it feel safe. That always meant someone wanted you to lower your guard. Dr. Nguyen sat at the table with a stack of files neatly aligned. Daniel and Marissa took seats beside her. Lorraine positioned herself just behind them, close enough to whisper. Dr. Nguyen smiled professionally. "Eleanor, thank you for coming in." "I didn't have a choice," I replied. She smiled a little less. "We're here because concerns have been raised about your behavior." "I'm aware." She opened the file. That was when I saw it. The timestamp. My stomach tightened. Lorraine had submitted supplemental notes after the emergency release window closed. Too late, too eager. She had overplayed, but not enough yet. They spoke for nearly an hour. About boundaries, about attachment, about risk. They never said the word kidnapping. They didn't have to. Then Marissa asked the question Lorraine had been waiting for. "Do you acknowledge that your fixation on the child may be influencing your judgment?" I met her eyes. "No." Lorraine inhaled sharply. "Mistake number 3. She leaned forward. "See," she said. "This is exactly what we mean. No insight, no flexibility." Dr. Nguyen raised a hand. "Lorraine," she said calmly, "please let Eleanor answer." Lorraine sat back too slowly. Control had slipped just a millimeter, but the room felt it. The decision wasn't immediate. They never are. Instead, they recommended observation. 72 hours. Voluntary. That word mattered. That word mattered. "Where would the child be during that time?" I asked. Lorraine answered before anyone else could. "With us," she said. "Of course." My pulse kicked hard. That wasn't part of the plan. Not hers. Not mine. Dr. Nguyen frowned. "That arrangement would require CPS consultation." Lorraine waved it off. "She's already in our care." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Marissa stopped typing. There it was. Procedural error. "You never skipped agencies." Never. The meeting adjourned with promises and paperwork. I walked out free. For now. But the ground had shifted. When I got back to the house, it was too quiet. Not waiting, quiet. Empty, quiet. "Mia?" I called. No answer. Lorraine's car was gone. Dana's too. I stood still, listening. Then my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. "Eleanor?" Lorraine said calmly. "Don't panic." I was already past panic. "We just took Mia to get ice cream," she continued. "She needed a break." "You moved her without authorization," I said. A pause. "Temporary care," Lorraine replied. "Perfectly reasonable." She hung up. That was when the cost arrived. Real. Immediate. I called Dr. Alvarez, then CPS, then Daniel. By the time the calls ended, my hands were shaking. Once. Just once. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. Using my skills had protected Mia, but it had also painted a target on her back. And Lorraine knew exactly where to aim. They brought Mia back 2 hours later, smiling. Too smiling. She ran to me, clinging hard. "They said you were sick," she whispered. "They said I might have to stay there." I closed my eyes. Lorraine watched from the doorway. Satisfied. She had lost ground procedurally, but she had gained leverage emotionally. That was worse. Files. Timelines. They hadn't been planning restraint. They had been planning removal. And now they knew how far they could push me before I pushed back, which meant the next move wouldn't be polite. It would be legal. Lorraine had broken protocol. I could use that. But she had learned something far more dangerous. She had learned that Mia was my weakness. And weaknesses don't get negotiated, they get exploited. The first call came at 6:42 a.m. CPS. The second came 3 minutes later. Silvercrest. By the third call, I stopped answering. Not because I was afraid, but because timing mattered now more than words. Mia sat on the couch beside me, wrapped in a blanket she didn't need. She leaned against my arm, small fingers gripping my sleeve as if I might vanish if she let go. I let her hold on. Every instinct I had told me not to move yet. When systems collide, the one that waits usually wins. At 9:10 a.m., the knock came again. This one was different, measured, patient. Patient, relentless. 2 CPS workers stood outside. One older, one younger, both alert, neither smiling. "Eleanor Harris?" the older woman asked. "Yes. We need to speak with you and the child." Lorraine appeared behind me instantly, robe tied tight, expression perfectly concerned. "Of course," she said. "We've been so worried." That was her tell. Lorraine never worried. They didn't sit us together. That mattered. Mia was taken into the kitchen with the younger worker. I was led into the dining room with the older one. "Ms. Patel." She placed a folder on the table but didn't open it. "Mrs. Patel?" "Harris," she said evenly. "This is not an accusation meeting. This is an assessment." "I understand. You are currently under review by Silvercrest." "Yes." "You removed the child from an environment that has now reported you unstable." "Yes." She watched my face carefully. "And yesterday," she continued, "the child was removed from your presence without your consent." I nodded. "That is not standard procedure," she said. "No, it wasn't." Lorraine hovered nearby, pretending to organize papers that didn't exist. Ms. Patel glanced at her once, then looked back at me. "Tell me why you believe this child is unsafe here," she said. I chose my words carefully. I did not mention bruises. I did not mention dolls. I did not mention fear. I mentioned timelines. Inconsistent supervision, I said. Medication mismanagement. Unauthorized removal. Ms. Patel's pen paused. Unauthorized by whom? By any governing body with jurisdiction. That was enough. She opened the folder. Mia came back 15 minutes later. Her face was calm. Too calm. She sat beside me again, quieter than before. Ms. Patel closed the folder. We'll be implementing a temporary safety plan, she said. Lorraine stiffened. Temporary? She repeated. But we're her guardians. Ms. Patel met her gaze steadily. For now, she said, the child will remain with Eleanor. Lorraine smiled tightly. But, there's always a but. But, there's always a but. But, Patel continued, this placement is conditional. She turned to me. You will not be alone with the child without oversight. I absorbed that. No overnight travel. No medical decisions without co-authorization. No deviation from routine. I nodded. Protection had arrived. With strings, Silvercrest moved faster than CPS. They always did. By afternoon, I was summoned, not requested, to an administrative review. Different room. No windows. 3 people I didn't know. And Dr. Nguyen, seated stiffly at the far end. The door closed behind me with a sound I felt in my spine. This wasn't about care anymore. This was about containment. They spoke in policies, risk mitigation, liability exposure, public optics. Lorraine's supplemental report lay on the table between us, highlighted, flagged, dissected. Dr. Nguyen didn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than I expected. We have concerns, one of the administrators said, that your recent actions demonstrate impaired judgment. I prevented harm, I replied. You disrupted process, another countered. Those are not the same. They were right. That was the price. They didn't revoke my privileges. They restricted them. Effective immediately, I was barred from independent consults. My access to patient advocacy channels was suspended. And, quietly, my name was flagged. Not publicly, internally. A yellow marker beside a long career. That marker would never fully disappear. Using my skills had protected Mia. It had cost me myself. When I returned home, Lorraine was waiting. She didn't gloat. She didn't threaten. She poured tea. You've made things complicated, she said mildly. Yes, I replied, for both of us. She smiled thinly. Don't mistake inconvenience for defeat. I won't, I said. You shouldn't either. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward Mia. I followed her gaze. That was when I understood. Lorraine wasn't trying to win anymore. She was trying to endure longer than me. That night, Mia slept in my room. Allowed, documented, conditional. She whispered into the dark. Are they going to take me again? Not tonight, I said. That was the most honest answer I could give. She nodded, trusting me with something I might not be able to protect. The weight of that trust pressed harder than any threat. I lay awake, reviewing everything. Files, calls, timelines. And one truth became unavoidable. I could use Lorraine's procedural breach, but doing so would expose me further. Publicly, irrevocably. The system would protect Mia, but it would erase me. Not physically, professionally, socially, permanently. There was no path where I stayed whole, only paths where I chose what to lose. Protection had arrived, conditional, monitored, temporary. Lorraine had lost control of the child, but I had lost control of myself. And the moment a system decides you are the risk, you don't get to argue. You only get to decide how much you're willing to sacrifice to keep a child safe. By the time the meeting notice appeared in my inbox, I already knew what I would do. That didn't make it easier. The subject line was clinical, almost polite. Multi-agency review. Final. Recommendation. Final meant no appeals. Final meant the record would settle into place and stay there. Mia sat on the floor nearby, arranging her dolls into a careful line. She paused when she noticed me watching. "Is it today?" she asked. "Yes." She nodded once, accepting it the way children do when adults have taught them that questions don't always change outcomes. That was the moment. I almost stopped. Almost. The building was newer than Silvercrest, all glass and brushed steel, designed to look transparent. It wasn't. The conference room was already full when I arrived. CPS representatives, Silvercrest administrators, a county legal observer, and Lorraine. She sat near the far end of the table, composed, hands folded neatly in her lap. Not defiant, not anxious, prepared. She glanced at me briefly, then looked away. That told me everything. She believed endurance would save her. Ms. Patel opened the meeting. "Today's purpose," she said evenly, "is to determine long-term placement and oversight recommendations." Placement, not custody. Language mattered. Silvercrest spoke first. They presented concerns, not accusations. Patterns, escalations, boundary confusion. They referenced my flagged status without explaining it. No drama, just accumulation. Then CPS spoke. They outlined Lorraine's procedural breach. Unauthorized removal. Failure to coordinate agencies. Preemptive assumption of authority. They didn't condemn her. They contextualized her. Lorraine listened calmly, still confident, still waiting me out. Then Ms. Patel turned to me. "Mrs. Harris," she said, "you may speak." This was the moment, not the dramatic one, the administrative one. I stood, and for the first time since this began, I felt tired, not afraid, not angry, tired in my bones. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I submitted evidence. Medical timelines, medication records, internal communications. And then, deliberately, I did something I had avoided my entire career. I disclosed myself. I spoke about my past work, the cases I had handled quietly, the systems I had navigated without headlines, the methods I used when children fell between jurisdictions. I didn't frame it as heroism. I framed it as pattern recognition. And then, I did the one thing Lorraine had not anticipated. I entered my own restriction into the record. Voluntarily. Independent consults relinquished. Advocacy privileges surrendered. Oversight accepted. The room shifted. You could feel it. This wasn't defiance. This was sacrifice. Lorraine leaned forward for the first time. "Why would you do that?" she asked, unable to stop herself. That was her mistake. The question wasn't procedural. It was personal. Ms. Patel looked at her sharply. "Mrs. Klein," she said, "please refrain." Lorraine sat back. But the damage was done. She had revealed urgency. I continued. "I am not asking for freedom," I said. "I am asking for structure that prioritizes the child." I paused, then added quietly, even if that structure limits me. That was when the county observer spoke for the first time. This statement, he said slowly, will be permanent. Yes, I replied. He nodded and typed. The recommendation came 30 minutes later. Mia would remain with me, under supervision. Documented, reviewable. Lorraine's guardianship was suspended pending reassessment, not revoked, suspended. But the endurance strategy had cracked. Suspension created scrutiny. Scrutiny created exposure. Exposure created consequences. Lorraine understood that too late. Afterward, she confronted me in the hallway. Not angry, not shouting, something colder. You destroyed yourself, she said softly, for one child. I met her gaze. No, I replied. No, I replied. I chose what would be destroyed. Her mouth tightened. For the first time, she had no response. The fallout wasn't immediate. That's not how systems punish you. It came in quiet ways. Emails that stopped arriving, calls that went unanswered, invitations that were never sent. My name still existed, but differently. I had become a footnote instead of a reference. That was the cost, and I carried it willingly. Mia noticed changes before I explained them. Why don't people come over anymore? She asked one evening. They're busy, I said. She considered that, then nodded, satisfied with an answer that didn't frighten her. That mattered more than accuracy. Lorraine lasted 3 months. That's how long endurance bought her. The reassessment uncovered what pressure always does: inconsistencies, contradictions, patterns she could no longer explain away. Dana broke first. Mark disappeared. And Lorraine, composed, controlled Lorraine, was forced to answer questions without controlling the room. She didn't lose loudly. She dissolved. The final hearing was quiet. No confrontation, no speeches, just a decision entered into the record. Permanent placement, conditional oversight removed. Mia stayed. Lorraine did not. Years later, people would ask why I stepped back when I did, why I accepted limitations others would have fought. I never gave them the real answer. The real answer was simple. Some records matter more than reputations. Some choices outlive you. And sometimes the only way to protect a child is to make sure the system remembers you as the risk it was willing to tolerate once. Mia grew up safe. That was the outcome. Not happy. Not perfect. Safe. As for me, the record never cleared. And I never asked it to, because long after Lorraine was forgotten, long after Silvercrest changed its policies and its names, there was one file that stayed exactly the same. The one that said, someone chose the child, and that was enough.